There are so many religions in the world. Some worship many gods, and some only one. All of them teach different things a person must do to get to heaven. But wait, there is no way all of them can be right. We either have to work our way to heaven, or it's by grace through faith. How do we know the Bible is right? How do we know that the Bible can be trusted? How do we know Jesus was even real? And if he was, did Jesus rise from the dead?
Welcome back. Here's what we know so far. There are two main groups that all religions fit into: salvation by works and salvation by grace. Now, how do we know which one is right? Well, the New Testament points us towards the answer of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. See, Jesus claimed to be the Messiah, the Son of Man and the Son of God. If God raised Jesus from the dead, then that means that Jesus is exactly who he said he was. The burial of Jesus in the tomb is one of the earliest and best attested facts about Jesus Christ, which leads us to the first widely accepted fact of history regarding the resurrection, which was after his crucifixion and burial, Jesus' tomb was found empty on the first day of the week by a group of his female followers. Now, if you think that sounds familiar, it's because you watched the last video, and I'm just recapping to make sure you're up to speed. So, we have an empty tomb, but an empty tomb doesn't necessarily prove a resurrection. That leads us to the second fact. So, let's dive in and see what the second widely accepted fact is about the resurrection. Various individuals and groups of people witnessed and experienced Jesus alive in different places and in different circumstances after his crucifixion. This fact is widely accepted by New Testament scholars and even those that are not sure if God is actually real or not. What are the three pieces of evidence to support this, though? Because without evidence, it's just a good idea. First, let's look at the list of eyewitnesses that are found in 1 Corinthians chapter number 15. In verse number 5, it says, "And that he was seen," now he is talking about Jesus, "and that he was seen of Cephas," that's another name for Peter, "then of the 12, that'd be the 12 disciples. After that, he was seen of above 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep. After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen of me also." The me here is talking about Paul. This passage is an early creed that most scholars date to within just a few years of Jesus' death. Far too early for any legends to be able to develop. Now, here's the second thing. After the eyewitnesses, these appearances are reported across 6 independent, non-biblical sources, and then 6 Christian writings, which are the Gospels and some other books in the Bible. One of the non-biblical sources was the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, refers to James, the brother of Jesus, who is called Christ. Now, this particular statement and passage is widely accepted as authentic by scholars. Now, Josephus, and we learn from his writings, that the Jewish leaders made a formal accusation against Jesus and participated in the events leading up to his crucifixion, which just sounds a whole lot like the Bible says. Just saying. His reference to James as the brother of Jesus, who is called Christ, is considered uncontested by scholars, meaning it's something that scholars accept to be true even if they don't believe in God. The third thing is some of these accounts include details historians look for when evaluating real events. They're called earmarks of historicity. They would be like unexpected details, or multiple sources, like we just talked about, or a testimony from an unlikely witness. Now you see, there's a difference between a historical myth, a legend, and fiction, or something that actually happened that has evidence to back it up. See, historical historicity, which that's just a fancy way of saying it's a historical act, or the people and events were not made up. So when you say historicity, it means it actually happened. Here's an example of an unlikely witness. Let's look at John chapter 7, verse 5, where it says, "For neither did his brethren believe in him." See, some members of Jesus' own family did not believe that Jesus, their brother, was the Messiah until after Jesus' resurrection. Notice how the oral tradition in 1 Corinthians 15 purposely mentioned he, Jesus, was seen of James, and that would be James, his brother. Jesus met his brother right where he needed, to help him realize who Jesus actually was. Now, this is actually a pretty big deal because for someone to go from not believing to start believing, it should cause us to ask a really important question. What happened that made James change his mind? Now, what would it take to convince you that your brother was the Messiah, God in the flesh? See, James probably thought that it was just his harebrained brother who had a harebrained idea, who went and got himself killed instead of choosing to live a normal life like you're supposed to do. If Jesus appeared to James after being crucified, buried, and risen, that would mean that James actually had what he needed to change his mind and accept that his brother, Jesus, was in fact the Messiah. See, that would actually make sense about why James changed his mind. Now, also, it wasn't just James. In Acts chapter number 1, verse 14, it says, "These all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren." Now notice it was more than just James. Now you might say that Jesus could convince one of his brothers, but I don't think we can reasonably say that he could convince all of them unless he had actually risen from the dead. And if you don't think that's enough, let's look at one more detail. Now according to history, James was actually stoned for his faith around AD 60. This doesn't prove that the resurrection's true, but what it does show is that James sincerely believed that Jesus has risen from the dead, even to the point that he was willing to die for it. Now, it's one thing to say that your brother is the Messiah, the Son of God, in the flesh, who rose from the dead, but it's another thing to die for believing it. Now, the best explanation for this sudden and radical transformation is that James genuinely believed that he saw Jesus risen from the dead. When we put these facts together, the empty tomb, the appearances, and the transformation of skeptics, the question becomes what event best explains all of this? Well, we have one more piece to the puzzle, and that is the third fact, which is, well, I guess I'm out of time for today. Let's do a quick recap. There were various individuals and groups of people who witnessed and experienced Jesus Christ alive in different places and in different circumstances after his crucifixion. These eyewitnesses are found in 1 Corinthians. It would be Cephas, which is another name for Peter, above 500 brethren at once, James, the brother of Jesus, who used to be a skeptic and then changed his mind and was later martyred for believing in Jesus, and then all the apostles, and last of all, Paul. The resurrection has also been shown to be real by 6 independent sources in the Gospels and as many as 6 non-biblical sources. That means something that's outside the Bible. One non-biblical source was the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who wrote James, the brother of Jesus, who is called Christ, a passage that is widely accepted as authentic by scholars, meaning that even if people don't believe in God, they accept that Jesus really lived based on the evidence. And lastly, there are accounts that include details that historians look for when evaluating the real events, like unexpected details, multiple sources, and testimonies from unlikely witnesses. For example, the women who discovered the empty tomb. We talked about that in the last video. Or even Jesus' own siblings who refused to believe in him, and later they became convinced that he had risen from the dead. One of them was even willing to die for that. The empty tomb, the appearances, and the transformation of the skeptics all seem to be good evidence that points to the resurrection of Jesus. So if you're curious about what the third fact of history is that the atheists can't actually disprove, you're gonna have to check out the next video. Thank you so much for joining me as we follow the evidence. I feel like we're starting to get close to having a clear picture of the truth. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll catch you in the next video. Okay, it's a take.